So what is autism? This is a question that an awful lot of people ask. Parents want to know if their child has autism. Schools want to know if this person needs special help, etc. And I have found that there's quite a lot of confusion and misunderstanding. So hopefully I'll be able to help with this today. To begin with, most people use medical criteria for diagnosing any condition, wherein they can see some kind of suffering. Medicine focuses on suffering and helping with suffering. They use logic more times than not as the basis to find solutions. So logical answers to suffering is the basic way to talk about autism. What would be another way? Well, another way would be to describe autism as a personality-sized or character-sized category of distractions which impairs this person's ability to connect socially. Now that's a lot to take in, and we're going to talk about that and what these categories of distraction are. But to begin with, I want to give you a little story about child development, which most people don't get, because this is, again, this is an alternate way to, an alternate focus. Okay, so when a baby is born, and for about the first 6 months of life, the baby is focused on mastering their 5 senses. This is pretty obvious to anybody who watches young babies. They can't turn over, they can't grasp things, they have no depth perception. And so in the first 6 months of life, a baby is focused on mastering their 5 senses. This is everything. This is noticing direction about where sound comes from. This is noticing where a sensation is in their body, etc. At about 6 months old and going on through about a year, the baby has now acquired enough mastery of their senses to move into the second area of development, which is that they use this mastery to sense and arrange the things in their environment. You see babies moving blocks, babies moving their toes, babies turning their bodies, rearranging their bodies, moving blankets, etc. And so in this second mastery stage, the focus is on arranging the things that they have learned to sense. At about a year, babies generally move on to the third mastery stage, and in this stage, babies begin to master the meanings of the things that they have learned to sense and arrange. So, for instance, a baby might pick up, maybe at 16 months old, a baby might pick up a pen and hold it up and say, "Pen." And you go, "Very nice, honey." And they go, "Pen." "Very nice." "Pen." Clearly, what they're doing is they're connecting the sound to the object. And this is an amazing thing in development. We often don't notice how incredible it is. To see how incredible it is, think about something that I might hold up, perhaps some part of a car engine. And if you don't know anything about car engines, I hold this part up and I ask you, what is this? And what would it feel like to not know? So now you reverse that and you can see how amazing it is. Pen. Okay. From about a year to age 2, 1 to 2, this is the time when the baby is beginning to master the meanings of things. And by the end of that time, the baby is beginning to be able to put words, these meanings together, the meanings of actions, the meanings of things, and is beginning to create senses. So, at the end of that stage, at about age 2, is the fourth and final mastery stage. And In this stage, the baby's grown tired of having to master their senses, to master the arrangement of things, and to master assigning meanings to words. And at this point, they just want to connect to people, no matter what's going on. And so from 2 to 4, babies' main focus is to be free from the mastery of learning itself. Okay, so now we have 4 stages of mastery. The first stage I can roughly refer to as comfort, the arrangement of the sensations. The second stage I can roughly call organization or neatness, the arrangement of the things you sense. The third stage I can call understanding, assigning meanings to the things that you sense. You understand what they are. And the fourth stage I can call freedom. So comfort, neatness, understanding, and freedom. These are the 4 qualities, kinds of needs that we master. We need to master them. Okay, what does this have to do with autism? Well, it turns out that if a baby has an incomplete mastery of their 5 senses, if this incompleteness is significant, if it becomes character-sized or personality-sized, then the person has a minority personality I refer to as Causes Autism. And what distracts them? Well, they do not have a complete mastery of their senses. Therefore, sensory information sometimes is missing and sometimes just blurts out inside their body. And that sudden onset and the unpredictability of that onset causes them to be quite irregular, sometimes very tending toward outbursts, physical outbursts, because the area that is offending them, distracting them, is their own body. Okay. Causes autism. Comfort and the lack of comfort. The second stage I referred to as neatness, age 6 months to a year. And so what happens if a person has an incomplete mastery of in this stage? If the incompleteness is character-sized, it affects everything in the person's character, then the person has the minority personality I refer to as OCD. The distraction is essentially that there are things in their environment which they cannot arrange to their satisfaction. They can sense the things, but they cannot arrange the things. I once had a person come with OCPD, which is the most extreme form of OCD, personality-sized, and this woman would describe making a salad and that it would take her 3 hours to arrange the pieces in the salad before she could eat it. Probably not very appealing after 3 hours. However, the arrangement of things distracted her to the degree that she had very few, if any, normal relationships, including with her 3 children. What about the third autism? The third autism is related to the third stage, mastery stage, where I described that babies assign meanings to the objects that they sense, and that this need to do this is understanding. And so, if a baby has an incomplete mastery of this third mastery stage, they have the minority personality that we refer to as Asperger's. And so a person with Asperger's is constantly looking to use the precise language to communicate anything, to the degree that they don't even realize people are in front of them. They don't realize when people are tired of hearing them. They don't realize when people are uninterested. Now, remember what I said about the baby saying pen, pen, pen. Now, think about that, 18 months old, 20 months old, and now realize that an adult with Asperger's is essentially doing the same pattern. Their special interest, pen, well, if the pens were their interest, becomes a thing that they talk about precisely, endlessly, and without any awareness of the person they're speaking to. No recognition of the social cues. Finally, the fourth autism is about the mastery of the freedom from learning itself, the freedom from having to master the five senses, the arrangements of things, and the understanding or meaning of things. And so this fourth minority personality is what I refer to as ADD or ADHD. And in this case, it's obviously the typical or the stereotypical kid who's in a classroom, who's cutting up, making jokes, interrupting the teacher. All of these things are social things at the expense of this learning environment. And learning in a classroom is a social setting of a kind. But they want to be free of any situation wherein they're learning. So typically a person with ADD functions really well if they're playing any kind of a physical activity, sports, dance, music, video games. And these kinds of things, which are in essence free of having to dig into the mind for learning and then do it, there's no separation between the thought and the action. In these settings, they're simply free to move and respond as they feel is correct. They're free. So, these then are the four autisms. Causes Autism, which is an incomplete mastery of the five senses. OCD, which is an incomplete mastery of the arrangement of the things you sense. Asperger's, which is an incomplete mastery of the arrangement of the meanings of the things you sense. And ADD, which is an incomplete mastery of the idea of learning itself. These are the four autisms.